Shri Rajaya Vivekananda Suray Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Netapahari Revered Swami Shuddhidanandaji Maharaj, my humble pranams to you and all of the monks assembled here, and my dear Chakravarti Sulibri, who is here on the dais, my hearty good wishes, and also Shanti Vratananji, and my dear sisters and brothers, my good wishes to all of you. Today we have gathered here on a very important occasion. We are celebrating the 125th anniversary of Swami Vivekananda's Chicago addresses. Often when I think about this subject, I personally feel that it is not only the 125th anniversary of Swamiji's Chicago addresses, it is also the 125th anniversary of India's awakening. It is also the 125th anniversary of Hinduism's awakening. And it is also the 125th anniversary of a global awakening which was initiated by this great sannyasi of our country. Now, why I am saying that this is the 125th anniversary of Hinduism's awakening? I have been asked to speak about Hinduism as Vivekananda had presented to the Parliament of Religions. In fact, the Parliament of Religions was just a platform. He actually addressed the entire human race. So when I say that it was 125th anniversary of Hinduism's awakening, this will become more clear when we look into this issue in contrast. What was the situation in the 19th century as far as Hinduism is concerned, as far as India is concerned? If we just go back into the history, we will see that in the 19th century, Hinduism as well as India was globally looked down upon. It is not only the world community which looked down upon Hinduism in India. Tragically, it was we Indians ourselves had completely lost faith and confidence and that pride in the great Sanatana Dharma system of thought. We had lost our pride in being Indians. Looking towards the West, we were completely enamored by the kind of scientific and technological developments that they were accomplishing during that time. It was in such a dark period that this great Swami Vivekananda comes and he breathes a fresh life into this Sanatana Dharma, tells the entire world about its glory, and once again makes we Indians feel proud about what Sanatana Dharma stands for and what India, what Bharat stands for. From the day Vivekananda spoke from that platform, it is from that point onwards, we can say that there has been a gradual and a consistent awakening among the Indian people regarding these two issues. These two issues, I mean to say, this great issue of what Sanatana Dharma is and where lies the glory of this great country called Bharat. Now see, Sister Nivedita, you all must have heard about her name, one of the great disciples of Swami Vivekananda, who had dedicated her entire life for the welfare of not only India but also Sanatana Dharma. And what she did is something which is a great marvel for any one of us. This great Nivedita, she makes a beautiful evaluation about Swami Vivekananda's contribution. Those who have read the complete works of Vivekananda, you must have seen that in the introduction, Sister Nivedita writes a beautiful line. She says that before the Parliament of Religions, when Vivekananda started to speak, it was the religious ideas of the Hindus. But by the time he ended his speech, Hinduism itself was created. Did Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, not exist before Vivekananda's speech? What is the meaning when Sister Nivedita said that by the time Vivekananda ended his speech, Hinduism was created? Did Hinduism not exist before that? What did she mean by this great statement? She meant that if you just look into the situation of the 19th century, and even before that, a few centuries before that, what Hinduism needed was a reorganizing of its own ideas, a consolidation of its own ideas, and an authoritative utterance, and an all-comprehensive presentation of this great system of thought called the Sanatana Dharma, the Vedic Sanatana Dharma. This is precisely what Vivekananda accomplished in his great Chicago addresses. For the first time in the history, in the modern history, we find one sannyasi coming and clearing the doubts about what Hinduism is. Prior to him, people have been defining Hinduism, taking one strand of Hinduism, one certain sect of Hinduism, and trying to define it. Here comes one sannyasi who, for the first time, presents to the world Hinduism in its all-comprehensive form and nature. This is the great feat which Vivekananda actually accomplishes in the Parliament of Religions. And it is this subject which I have been asked to speak about, that the Hinduism as presented by Swami Vivekananda in the Parliament of Religions. Before I go into that subject, I would just like to take 2-3 minutes in a very general way to understand what this 11th September Chicago addresses, which is today considered to be an epochal piece of a speech. In the history, we know that we celebrate different big events which happen, but hardly we come across of any instance where a certain speech is being celebrated year after year, year after year. 125 years have gone by and we are still remembering, and this speech will be remembered for another 1,000 years to come. And this is going to happen for the pure and simple relevance it has got for you and me, for the entire global community. That is the beauty of this great speech. When I look into this small piece of speech, which Vivekananda delivered just hardly 3.5 minutes, I find that we can look at it from two standpoints. If you take it as different sentences giving different ideas, you can say that it is a packet of ideas of infinite potency. If you look into the entire Chicago speech, you may say that it is a packet of ideas. Ideas which infinite potency, of which only a little bit has actually started to work. And the little bit which has actually started to work, it has impacted the entire globe in a very deep manner. The real story is yet to begin. Or else you can look upon this small piece of speech from a different standpoint, and that is, I feel personally, more inclined towards that attitude. I don't look into the ideas which Vivekananda has given. I see Vivekananda's this speech as an explosion. It is an explosion of Hindu pride. It is an explosion of Indian pride. If you take the entire 3-minute speech of Vivekananda, you will see that whole speech is filled with a feeling of pride, at a time when the entire Indian community had lost all its pride. Vivekananda came to once again infuse that pride in Hinduism, that pride in what India stands for, in a race, in a people who had completely lost that self-esteem, that self-respect, that self-confidence. It is from that time onwards, dear sisters. Today, if we are standing here and speaking with this kind of a confidence about what Hinduism stands for, if India is accomplishing great things in the world platform, we should remember this great process was initiated by that monk on 11th September 1893. It is from that day onwards this process has started. That Sanatana Dharma which was looked down as a religion of barbarous people, the entire world literally looking down upon it, today that is the one system of thought which is being sought in every corner of the globe. Whether you take yoga, whether you take meditation, whether you take Advaita Vedanta, any of these things you may see that today all over the world, people, intelligent people, thinking people, thoughtful people, they are seeking these great ideas from the Vedic Sanatana Dharma. Now coming down to this great system of thought of the Vedas, what is that system of thought? What is the speciality of the system of thought when we think about that? See, today we talk about different religions in the world. We should understand one thing: how is Vedic Sanatana Dharma very different, categorically different from the so-called other religions in the world? Where lies the difference? The difference lies in one very important thing. If you just look at the religions as they are practiced today, as they exist in society today, religions are essentially presented and practiced today as belief systems. They are all different belief systems. If you just go deep into it, they are all just based upon belief. You have to believe in certain dogmas and creeds, and there the matter ends. And what is belief? We should understand that belief is just a proposition or a statement which is taken to be true, about which we don't know whether it is true or false. So religions as they are existing today in society, most of the Abrahamic religions, the Semitic religions, they all stand on the pedestal of belief. You have to believe in certain things. You have to subscribe to certain dogmas and creeds. You have to subscribe to the power and authority of church and book. And then alone you become religious. And yet it all ends up in belief. That's all, just belief. Now any belief system in the world, you all should know that this belief system can never become universal. Every system of belief will always be at loggerheads with other systems of belief. And this is the main reason why, when religion is presented to the world as belief systems, they become the cause of unending communal tension and racial hatred between different groups of the people. Today, all of the world, this great problem of communal tension, it is only owing to this one big factor where religion is presented and practiced as mere belief. Now, contrasting to this, what do we find in the Vaidika Sanatana Dharma? The first and foremost thing which Vivekananda accomplished in his Parliament of Religion is that he presented to the world this Vaidika Sanatana Dharma not as a system which stands on the pedestal of belief, but a thought system which is based upon scientific principles. We should understand one point. Science alone can be universal. Belief systems cannot. The science which is taught in the classrooms of America is not different from the science taught in the classrooms of India or Australia. It is the same science. Have you ever heard about science clashing with each other? There's no clash when we come to the realm of physical science, because it is based upon observation, experimentation, and verification. Repeated verification. Repeatability is one of the striking principles of science. You can repeatedly verify. But when we come to the religion, as they are existing today, there is no place for verification in that. And every belief system, a group of people from a certain location, they believe in certain thing which stands at loggerhead with another group of people who have a different belief system. And both the belief systems are unverifiable. So it is science and scientific principle alone which can become universal. Does Vedic Sanatana Dharma stand the test of science or scientific principles? This is precisely what Vivekananda accomplished in his Chicago addresses, where, if you read his great paper on Hinduism, which was the third great session in which Vivekananda presented to the entire world community in our modern history this great subject of what Hinduism stands for and its scientific basis, telling the entire world that this great Vedic Sanatana Dharma, it's not a belief system, it is something which can be verified. What it claims, it's not something to be believed in, but you can test it for yourself. It welcomes questioning. It welcomes verification. It doesn't stop at just blindly believing in anything. And what are the basic principles of this great system of thought? I shall just sum up in a few points. 30 minutes is too less a time to handle this vast subject. Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, that which is eternal, if you have to talk about it in 30 minutes, that is quite a daunting task. I can understand that. So, what are the basic principles? 5-6 points I'll just keep before all of you, dear sisters and brothers, which would sum up all that Hinduism or Vedic Sanatana Dharma stands for. What does it teach to the entire world? Vivekananda told these things in his characteristic brilliance. Even today, anybody who wants to understand what Hinduism is, every man, every woman, anywhere in this world, if he or she wants to understand what Vaidika Sanatana Dharma is, he or she will have to turn the pages of complete works of Swami Vivekananda. So what does this Vedic Sanatana Dharma teach us? Number one, Vivekananda hammered this idea. He says that, it is not he says, it is Vedic Sanatana Dharma teaches us that at the core of this creation, there is divinity. Divinity is at the core of this creation. Number one. Number two, if divinity is at the core of the creation, in that case, divinity is at the core of everything in this creation. Everything in this creation emerges from divinity, it exists in divinity, and it goes back into the divinity. If that is the case, number 3, Vivekananda says, each human being is divine. Divinity is at the core of each one of us. That is our real nature. A Hindu should know this right from this childhood, that I am divine. Divinity is at the core of our personality. This is the third point which Hinduism has to teach. If divinity is at the core of each one of us, the fourth principle is, it is not enough to just believe in this divinity. The main purpose of human life, my dear sisters and brothers, keep it in mind, the main purpose of existence in the human body is to experience this divinity. That is Hinduism. Hinduism doesn't mean just going to the temples and praying for this and that. Hinduism is a way of life, a scientific way of life, which initiates you into the great pursuit of self-discovery. So the fourth point is, Hinduism says, to realize this divinity is the main purpose of human life. Now the fifth point, Vaidika Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism says, there is not just one method or one way to realize this divinity. There are any number of paths and ways to reach this great experience. Any number of paths. Every other religion will say, my path alone is the final path. There is no other path. Hindu Sanatana Dharma says, there are any number of paths which can take us to the experience of this divinity. Number 5, Hinduism says, in that case, what is the nature of this ultimate reality? The nature of this ultimate reality is that it is both without names and forms, and as well as it is with names and forms. And because it is both without names and forms, and as well as with names and forms, it can accommodate any number of ways and methods to reach that ultimate goal. That is why, dear friends, you will see that in this country, India, where so many religions exist, so many thought systems exist, everybody is existing here in perfect harmony. This kind of a scenario we don't find in any part of the world except in this great land. You know what makes this possible? Do you think it is just a single word called secularism which we have put into the constitution? When was this constitution born? This is a land which was governed. The thoughts of the people, the emotions of the people, the pursuits of the people were governed by the great principles of Vaidika Sanatana Dharma, which has got this attitude that ultimate reality is one. Sages call it by different names. Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. These are the great two ideas which makes this great system of thought universal, and which is the characteristic feature of this great land, India. It is not because we have put the word secularism into the constitution, not at all. If India is like this today, it is only owing to the great thought system of the Vedas, which is today known as Hinduism, and because of its scientific characteristic. Then Vivekananda goes ahead to tell something wonderful. He tells us that, you see, we are all divine by nature, number one. Secondly, he talks about the beauty of the great scientific principle of karma and reincarnation. Look into the scientific temper of his thought. Vivekananda says, you see, if we just look into the society, we will find that some people are happy, some people are suffering, some people are very wealthy, and some people are poor. Why? If there is one God who is just and who is all-powerful, why is there so much of suffering in this world? And there comes this great scientific principle of karma and rebirth. Then he raises the question, then what is the proof of rebirth and reincarnation? Again, rebirth and reincarnation is not something to be believed in. it can be verified. Vivekananda says it can be verified. How? And he gives a beautiful explanation. I don't want to go into the depth of all those things here. So in short, what did Vivekananda say in that great Parliament of Religions was these 5 or 6 points to sum up. And then in this, my dear friends, you will see that we also find the great characteristic quality of we Indians, the Indians who live in this land, who have been absorbing all the different kinds of people coming into this land without any conflict. If you just look into the speech, 11 September speech, the first 3 sentences, it's so beautiful it is. Vivekananda says that, I thank you in the name of the millions and millions of Hindus of all sects and classes. He says that, I thank you in the name of the most ancient order of monks in the world. And he says that, I thank you in the name of the mother of all religions. Which is this mother of all religions? A religion which has given birth to so many systems of thought in the world. And unfortunately, those systems of thought have been attacking this mother for millenniums together. But the most interesting point is that Hinduism has got such inherent strength that it absorbs all those systems of thought which actually goes to attack it. Vivekananda very strikingly says that systems after systems rose in India as well as outside India, and they have attacked this Vedic system of thought from time to time. And yet, this system of thought, Vedic system of thought, this Hinduism, has got some inherent strength. What is the strength? Nothing else but the divinity and the scientific nature of the entire phenomenon. It is owing to that it has got infinite capacity to absorb everything which actually comes to it in the form of attack and threat. Great prehistoric religions have almost disappeared, one after the other, or they are in a very small group here and there. But Hinduism today, even today, is making its presence felt all over the globe, especially after Vivekananda's emergence. The impact of Vivekananda on the entire world and the thought of Hinduism and over the entire world, I will just sum up in a few words. In 2009, article which came in Newsweek, an American magazine, and this matter has been published in different newspapers and even in some books also. So there, that American editor, whose name is Lisa Miller, she has made a study about the impact of Hinduism on America, on the American population. Just imagine, friends, in 1890s, at a time, this Parliament of Religions was organized only to prove the superiority of the Christian faith. And what happened after that was just the opposite. Vivekananda came, emerged on that great platform, and Hinduism was once again kept on the topmost pedestal in this world. So Lisa Miller says that in that beautiful article that today in the 2010s, this article came out in 2008 or 9. So whatever statistics she has provided, it belongs to that period. So she says that, you see, Americans at one upon a time, they used to make fun of Indians and the Hindu religion. But today the case is that a big percentage of the American population have been influenced by the Hindu thought. She says that a big population of the Americans have become Hindus in their thought and in their action. If you go by the census, you will find that they are still Christian in their census statistics. But if you look into their day-to-day life and the way they are thinking, they have become Hindus. This conversion has taken place not by force, not by the power of sword, not by the power of any persuasion. It is the very scientific nature of the Hindu thought. Anywhere, any thinking person, he or she will have to subscribe to this scientific way of life because it is something which can be verified. Today, a big chunk of the Americans, it is not only the question of Americans, everywhere in the world, she says that now these Americans, they believe that we are all divine. Christianity teaches them that we are all sinners. We are born sinners. And the only way of redemption is just one, the Son of God, Jesus. There is no other way. Today, a big chunk of Americans, they believe that we are all born divine. We are not sinners. And redemption is not by only one way. There can be any ways to attain redemption in life. The Vedika Sanatana Dharma thought system has gripped their minds. Today, a big chunk of Americans, they believe in karma and rebirth. Today, a big chunk of the Westerners, they are adopting the vegetarianism way of life. Today, they are believing in the importance of ahimsa, non-violence. And a big chunk of Americans today, it is said that in that article, she says that they prefer cremation. Just like the Hindu cremate their dead bodies, a big chunk of Americans want to cremate their bodies after they die. The impact of Hinduism, which Swami Vivekananda presented in the Chicago Parliament of Religions. So, dear friends, I just want to sum up whatever I have said, that if you just look into the subject of Hinduism, which Swami Vivekananda presented to the entire world, it can be summed up in 2-3 points. Number one is that we should remember that today we are celebrating the 125th anniversary of not only Swamiji's Chicago address, but we are celebrating the anniversary of Hinduism's 125th year of awakening. We are celebrating 125th year of India's awakening and also the 125th year of a global awakening, which is just at the starting stage. The real thing is yet to come. Secondly, what Vivekananda has given in that short speech is that two things. It's an explosion of the Hindu pride and also the explosion of the pride in being Indian, which today, as youngsters, we should remember that we should have that kind of a pride for this Vedic Sanatana Dharma and also for being India. Because it is this scientific system of thought, this alone is going to change the face of this civilization. Vivekananda in 1896 in London, he makes a beautiful statement. I will just utter that and I will stop my talk. There Vivekananda says, you just look into the foresight of this great rishi. He says that in America I have just started my work. I have just raised 1 or 2 waves. We have to raise a tidal wave. The society has to be turned upside down. The world has to be given a new civilization. Vivekananda says that the world has to be given a new civilization. Can you just feel the outreach of this person's emotions and thoughts? How far ahead of his time this person could see and think. And the role of Indians and the role of Hindu Sanatana Dharma in this matter, it is this scientific way of life which is going to actually change the face of civilization in the future, which Vivekananda actually hoped for. And he had pinned all his hopes on the youngsters of this country. So I feel that it is the onus and responsibility of all of us, especially we youngsters, to see that wherever you are, you all become the carrier of this banner of Vedic Sanatana Dharma. Wherever you go with this pride about what Vedika Sanatana Dharma stands for and what India stands for and what India can do to the entire world as far as changing the face of this civilization is concerned. Thank you so much.